This is Colonel Conrad Reynolds. I've got a wonderful guest on our show today. He's our special guest, Congressman Eli Crane. He is a member of from Arizona's 2nd District. He's a member of the Freedom Caucus, and he's one of the 8 patriots who stood up and got rid of Speaker McCarthy, and now they're in the middle of selecting a new speaker. And thank you for taking the time, Congressman, to join us.
Thank you, Colonel. I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. I'd like to get a little bit, if you would, tell us about what's going on right now in D.C. About the speakership. What are you seeing?
Well, we have another speaker battle going on right now between Steve Scalise and Jim Jordan. So right now, I think Steve Scalise has a slight edge. I voted for Jim Jordan yesterday in conference, and they don't have the votes, so we haven't gone to the floor to vote. So we're waiting to see how this thing is going to play out. But I think there's several people that are pretty hardline on Jim Jordan. I know that's what my voters want. So that's who I'm going to continue to vote for. And the unfortunate thing about this town is that this town and the body up here, it's not very conservative, and so you don't always get ideal choices, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, well, that's why we got you up there. That's why the people of Arizona sent you there. I think your election was fantastic. Of course, I've met President Trump, and he endorsed you. And I will tell you, we need more people like you in the Freedom Caucus. In fact, you have, I can't believe it, you've got 3 of your congressmen from Arizona in the Freedom Caucus, correct? Congressman Biggs and Gosar.
Yeah. Gosar, we have a pretty strong representation up here in the Freedom Caucus from Arizona, which is always nice to see, and it definitely makes me proud.
Absolutely, and I wish I'm in Arkansas, as you know, and I wish we had here, but all 4 of our congressmen, none of them are in the Freedom Caucus. And it really makes me sad because we're supposed to be a solid red conservative state, but it's just not working out that way. So we need to get more in the Freedom Caucus. Would you agree with that?
I would absolutely agree with that. We could definitely use the firepower, and I think if we had more support, we could get a lot more done. I think one of the things that happens is you come up here as a freshman, and first of all, if you run as somebody who's going to join the Freedom Caucus, then the establishment goes after you. They spend a lot of money on you, and they think you're going to be a problem child up here. Right. And for good reason, because the Freedom Caucus usually fights against the establishment. And so a lot of people don't even want to, the name Freedom Caucus to come out of their mouth while they're campaigning because they think it's going to torpedo their chances of getting here. And then once they get here, the Freedom Caucus is, as you've probably seen over the last couple of weeks and this year, if you're in the Freedom Caucus, especially if you're an active member trying to stop the swamp, you're called a traitor, legislative terrorist, and arsonist. And the funny thing is, actually, the sad thing is like, if you go back to my district or you even come into my office and you sit with the folks that answer the phones and the emails, you'll see that, the vast majority of people that I represent are supportive, proud, and they're the ones that, are letting their voices be heard. Hey, we want you to change that town. We want you to use every tool at your disposal to change the way that town works because it's so out of control. It affects our lives. We want limited government, and we want a government that puts us first. And unfortunately, this government up here in Washington, D.C. does not put the American people first.
Well, I could not agree with you more. And I will tell you, the financial problems that we have, I've heard time and time again, the congressman, even from my district and from here in Arkansas, will say, we've got to get a hold of our budget. We've got to get a hold of the southern border. We got to fix that. And they've done neither one of them have they tackled. In fact, from 2014 until now, we went from 16 trillion to 33 trillion. I mean, they're not doing a whole lot to fix our budget. I mean, to fix it, it's just not. We keep borrowing and borrowing and borrowing.
No, you're right, Colonel. And one of the reasons I'm glad that folks like you are doing their own shows and podcasts and giving people an alternative to the mainstream media that works hand in hand with the uniparty to give them air cover is that your voters and people in your area will have a much better chance of getting a clearer picture of what the reality is up here in Washington, D.C. One of the things I tell people all the time is because the American people have been so complacent for so long, and they don't really pay attention to politics. And we've made, some of these paradigms where you don't talk about politics, you don't talk about religion at the dinner table, and often that extends throughout the House and everywhere else. Most people can't even tell you who their congressman is, let alone whether they voted for, the uncapped minimum $4 trillion, debt increase earlier this year. Or they can't tell you if they voted for a CR, a continuing resolution, in a Republican Congress to continue spending money at the same level that Nancy Pelosi was. And so the only way this thing turns around is if Americans actually get engaged, they get back into being interested in politics and testing their representatives to see, okay, this is what you're saying on the campaign trail, but how'd you actually vote on that? And then, calling them, emailing them, and letting your voice be heard. That's the only way this turns around.
I agree with you 100%. I think it's interesting that you said earlier, they call you a traitor, and the people who are standing up for the American people. I mean, you were a Navy SEAL. You spent 14 years of your life protecting our country. You answered the call to duty after 9/11, and you're the traitor. It's unbelievable that we allow people to say that about heroes like yourself and many other people that I have been associated with my entire career. I spent 30 years in the military. But I will tell you that there are people who would call me a traitor just for having my little show here and trying to interview people and get the truth out. It's crazy. Yeah. I mean, that's what we're dealing with now. We really are dealing with a lot of people, not just in the Democrat Party, but in the Republican Party. And so anyway, tell us a little bit about, because I know your time is limited, so I got a couple things. What are your feelings about Ukraine and Israel? What's going on as far as those two particular countries? Let's take Ukraine first.
Yeah. So, I mean, like most Americans, I never want to see Russian aggression, or I never want to see, innocent people get killed. That being said, I think that you have to look at the entirety of the situation from our economic, standpoint right now. You talked about the $33 trillion in debt that we have, $36 trillion by January 2025, and a $2 trillion annual deficit in perpetuity. Right now, the way we're going, we will never pay a dollar down of the national debt. And I think we've already sent over close to $150 billion to Ukraine in a war that I don't think it really is feasible that we're going to win, even though the talking heads in the media continue to say that. I think we're escalating a war with, arguably the greatest nuclear power on earth. And I just don't think it's our battle to fight. I really don't. And I don't, it's one of the most corrupt countries in the entire world. And to me, when I look at Israel, I do see a different story for a couple of reasons. One, because Israel has been an ally of ours for a very long time, where I don't think you can make the same case with Ukraine. And the other thing is, for me, because I'm a Christian, when I read my Bible, the whole thing is Jerusalem centric. It's Israel centric. And in Genesis, the Lord even says, I will bless those who bless Israel. I will curse those who curse Israel. That being said, as an American representative, my primary responsibility is to represent the people that sent me here and put them first. And so I do think that we should support Israel. I haven't voted for any funding for Ukraine. And that being said, though, my number one priority is to make sure that we secure our southern border, because if I'm on the Homeland Security Committee, and if you look at the stats just from the last couple of years, we've had about 250 individuals on the terror watch list encountered at our southern border. Okay. And then we've had about at least 1.5 million gotaways. Those are people we don't know who they are. We don't know where they went, and we don't know what their intentions are. Okay. And I'll remind you, sir, it only took about 19 people to pull off 9/11. So if you don't think for a second that there are terror cells stood up in this country and ready to do some of the same type of stuff that you just saw Hamas do in Israel, you're a fool. It's happened here before, and we've set the conditions to where it can easily happen again. And we are encountering more individuals from the Middle East and from North Africa, some of, these Muslim majority nations who have a history of, waging jihad on Westerners and Jews alike, and quite frankly, anybody that doesn't adopt their religious ideology. And so, that's my number one concern right now, is that we're going to see, once again, we're very likely to see attacks on the U.S. homeland. And as an American representative, that's my number one priority. And so my message is to President Biden and Secretary Mayorkas and everybody else in this administration that, has ended the policies under the Trump administration that were keeping the American people safe. You guys need to get serious about securing that border. You also need to get serious about finding these folks, these gotaways and these folks that have come into this country. And you need to start putting the American people and their security first. You need to take that seriously, because it's obvious to everyone that you don't. And in my opinion, and I hate to even put this out there, but in my opinion, they're very likely to have American blood on their hands. And that's something that none of us want to see. I
agree with you 100%. And the southern border has been a big thing of mine for years, all the way from 2009, 2010, when the big thing at that point was amnesty. We're not going to give amnesty, not going to do it. Well, they said, the Republicans said, if we can just get control of the House, the Senate, and the the Congress and the presidency, we will change this. Well, they got it. We gave it to them. In 2017, 2018, we had the House, the Senate, and the presidency. But they couldn't get it passed. They couldn't get the bills. The rhinos in Congress would not allow it. So now they want to blame everything on the Democrats. But in reality, when they had the chance to fix it and make it and get that border secure, they chose not to. So what do we say to the voter when we have the Republicans took control, didn't fix it, but now they're out there pointing, saying, look, the Democrats are not securing the border. Elect us.
I think that this is, the great thing about being a congressman, and one of the bad things about being a congressman, is we run every 2 years. The great thing about that is you can fire me every 2 years if I'm not doing a good job of representing you. And this is going back to what I said earlier. This is why the American people need to start paying attention. Don't let your congressman or your representative come back to your district and gaslight you and tell you that they're fighting for you, or they're working hard on the border, or they're all about getting our fiscal house in order, and yet they cast votes that are completely opposite. So you need to pay attention to how they're voting. It's going to take a little activism. It's going to take a little research on your part, and you need to be willing to hold them accountable. And if they're not willing to represent you and your desires and protect you, then you need to get rid of them. And that's just the reality that I live in. You talked about, Republicans not being willing to secure the border. Also, Republicans, when we had control of everything, weren't willing to repeal Obamacare. Right. This is the reality I live in every single day, where you have a bunch of weak individuals that, in my opinion, they're misguided. And some of them are bought and paid for. Some of them are corrupt. Some of them are power hungry, and, they'll do anything to climb the political ladder. And so you have multiple buckets of people up here, in my opinion, that really aren't doing a good job representing the American people. And I can tell you, I had the idea that if I came up here, I wouldn't be very popular in this town. That's proven to be a reality. And in many ways, it makes me proud, because I know that you can't have your cake and eat it too. If you try and come up here and, be popular with everybody and, climb the corporate ladder, but also fight for the people back home, you're going to find yourself in way too many sticky situations. And so for me, I'm okay with not being very popular up here, and in many cases being hated by a lot of people in my own party, and that's okay. It's not mutual. I don't hate the people in my own party, but definitely find many of them frustrating in how they vote. And I'm just going to keep representing the people in Arizona's 2nd congressional district as long as they'll have me. And or I shouldn't say as long as they'll have me. I really don't want to do this job for that long. But we'll see what God has in store for us, man.
Well, I can't thank you enough. I do want to get, at some point, talk to Congressman Biggs and go start telling them they need to come on my show. And I'd like to get you for, a full hour at some point when your schedule allows for it, because I want to talk a little bit about your life and what you've done. And I really appreciate you taking the time. One last question. How can my viewers help you?
Yes, sir. For the number one thing I ask for is prayer, for guidance, wisdom, and direction and protection over my family, and that God would bless this country. And the second thing I ask for, if people want to support me, they can go to eli4arizona.com and they can support us there. But the number one thing is just please pray for this country. We definitely need it.
We will do that. Sir, thank you so much for coming on our show. It's been great. I know you got a busy day ahead, so I'll let you get to it, but we will be having you back. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Colonel. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye. Bye. Give this video a thumbs up, if you will. Like and subscribe to our channel. Very important for us to spread this message to everybody, and I can't do it without your help. This is the Colonel of Truth, and I'm Colonel Conrad Reynolds, and thank you for joining us.